Hello, and welcome to That Which Binds Us. My name is George Crewell, and I'm your host. I'm here with Jack Crewell, our co-host.
What's up?
And today is our first ever episode ever.
First ever.
Ever. And today we just dove right in, kept it light for our audience. We thought we'd just process some old religious trauma.
It's just like some light listening. You really turn this on while you're working out, while you're having fun with friends.
Maybe with your family at dinner. This would be great.
Your kids will love to listen
on a long
to this.
road trip. You'd love it. So we talked about our conversion stories. We talk about our deconversion stories, all with our general just charm and wit. And we did it well. So
also, something about these podcasts that I think you're going to have a lot of fun with, audience, is if you can guess how long it takes me to unpack my trauma with my parents. It won't take long this episode, but every episode you better bet your ass we're getting into it. So
maybe we'll have live lines on over-unders for times on will Jack make it more than 10 minutes?
Yeah.
Less than 10 minutes.
Hint,
we'll see.
I don't make it more than 10 minutes this episode.
Yeah, we hope you enjoy it and hope you continue listening. So thank you.
Okay, test. Okay, hell yes.
Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing
Perfect,
1, 2, 3.
baby. Look at those
Yeah, here we go.
waveforms.
Okay, so yeah, we're just gonna talk about something light, keep it light for everyone, and just talk about our religious stories and our process of deconversion. So
Keeping it light.
keeping it light. How do you feel about that, Jack? How does that make you feel?
Pretty light, pretty floaty. Like not that big of a deal.
Yeah,
Doesn't really make anyone mad to talk about.
yeah,
I feel pretty good. Yeah.
cool. Well, I figured I should just mention it to you 5 minutes before we started.
Okay, great. Well, I'm glad to get started. I've been thinking all day about what I'm gonna say.
One thing I had been thinking is all great deconversion stories start with a conversion story. So I want you to paint the picture.
So embarrassing.
Paint the setting for me and our listeners. Where were you? How old were you? Who was there with you, or was anyone there with you when you asked Jesus Christ himself into your heart?
Wow, that makes me uncomfy. It's a lot easier to talk about how much I don't care for the Bible anymore. But then when I have to get into a mode where I really, really, like when I have to talk about a time I cared about the Bible, it makes me feel different. It makes me feel interesting. I don't know. That's maybe even its own conversation. So why does it make me feel so bad? Like when somebody will talk about like worship or like a worship song that used to like really get my goat. And now when I think about it, instead of just being like, oh, that's silly, which I wish is the attitude I had, I think like, oh, that's bad. That's so embarrassing.
Right.
But yeah, so you have first question in. You have poked something that I didn't know existed.
You can paint the setting with broad strokes.
Yeah, let me start. Okay, in first grade, it was first grade. We were going to school in this little schoolhouse. It was a small private Christian school that met in a tiny little schoolhouse. It was like a 2-room schoolhouse. There was the olders and the youngers, and the olders was 6th, 7th, and 8th grade.
That brings back memories.
And
Olders and youngers.
And the youngers was first grade through 5th grade, and I was one of the youngers. I was in first grade. I don't remember where I got this Bible. I treated it like a Bible. It actually wasn't a Bible. It was a book of prayers. It was like a year-long devotional where every day you open it up and read a prayer for the day.
Yeah.
So like a good little Christian boy, I did. I think I should also start off by saying the way I was like built to be, like designed in a lab to be, is to show people that I'm good, that I'm the best, that I'm taking it seriously, that I'm the real deal. So when I got this Bible, and I don't even really know what it meant to be a Christian, but when I got this Bible, and again, I'm calling it a Bible. It's not really a Bible, but I was reading that shit every day.
First grade?
First grade, I was reading that shit.
Damn.
First grade, I was all over
When did you
it.
start reading as a human being?
Oh. Did I already tell you about the thing where I had to prove myself to everybody all the time? Like that was starting at 4 years old. I was like showing everybody how well I could read. So
Oh, wow.
I felt really proud of myself in kindergarten because I was the only kid who could read full sentences. And then in first grade, I was really proud of myself because not only was I reading full sentences, I was reading the Bible every day.
The best sentences you could read.
Yeah, there were no better sentences for me to have been reading than these shitty fake prayers made up by some white guy. And I thought it was scripture, so I was reading it like scripture. So yeah, I don't even know if it's fair to call this my like conversion story.
Yeah,
because I had just always been a Christian. Like
You're
I'd
right.
always been in the church. It was always important to me. I don't really remember a time where it went from 0 to 100. It was just like, oh, maybe this is legit. Oh, I've heard enough pastors tell me that I'm going to hell to know that maybe I don't want to do that anymore. But the first time I remember it hitting me, that was like, oh, hell is a real place, and I could go there, and I really don't want to do that.
Yeah.
Was I had gotten in trouble. It remained my favorite Bible verse all the way through high school, actually. But I'd gotten in trouble. Oh, am I going to remember the Bible verse?
Still
No.
first grade?
Still first grade. I'd gotten in trouble. I don't know what I did. But I got in trouble, and I read a Bible verse, and a Bible verse in this little book Bible thing. And it said, whosoever of you are in trouble, whosoever of you are something, call on God. Yeah, it was like a list of things, and one of them was in trouble. And of course, me being a first grader, I'm like, well, I'm in trouble. I just got in trouble by mom real bad. So I'm one of those people. And it said, call on God's name or something. So I was like, God, what's up? I'm in trouble. And of course, the Bible meant like if you've fallen into fire and you're in trouble, call on God. But I'm like, my mom's kind of mad at me, God. What do I do about this? Can you help me out? And so I did. I prayed, and I felt an overwhelming emotion in that moment about God and about my badness. I was convinced that I was a bad person.
Mm-hmm.
And so I cried and I prayed and I said, God, I'm really bad. You're really good. Can you help me not be bad? Because I'm in trouble. And this Bible verse says, call on God if you're in trouble. So I did, and I actually committed the Bible verse to memory. Now this is the part that makes me really feel silly. Because I was in first grade, I was like, I memorized this Bible verse, which is crazy. I'm like, first graders aren't doing that. So I went and told my teacher, hey, Mrs. Taylor, should I censor her name?
Yeah.
Okay.
Censor. Yeah, she's not going to want this.
Hey, Mrs. Blank, I just memorized a Bible verse, and I'm in first grade.
Oh, shoot.
And she was like, did you really? I was like, yeah.
Oh
and she reacted exactly the way I wanted to, which was amazed. She was so impressed with me. She was giving me kudos. She was telling everybody like how cool Jack was. And I was like, yeah, he is cool. And then she said, Jack, would you want to recite this Bible verse that you memorized in front of the whole school?
Damn.
And I said, yes,
hell
please. Yeah. I said, fuck, yes, shit. God damn, yes, I do.
That's my shit.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Nice.
But I said yes. I said, that sounds amazing. And I did. And I read the Bible verse in front of everybody. And Miss Taylor started crying. And I started crying.
Whoa.
Because I was like, I'm doing this shit. I'm like, I know how to be a Christian. This is all you got to do to be a Christian.
Damn.
And I'm a good one of those.
I'm trying to think of a better start to someone's relationship with Jesus than that.
Like a resounding applause to me reading the Bible. Reciting it.
Adoration from adults.
Yeah.
They're crying.
I literally could not have done it better. And I felt on top of the world. So from then on, it was like, I'm a Christian.
So that whole moment when you're like crying and everything, that was at school?
Yeah.
So were you alone or with a teacher?
I was actually in front of the whole school while I was crying and while she was crying. I was standing like the whole school. Okay. I should make it clear.
The sea of people.
This school had 18 people in it. I said there was olders and youngers, and that's because there wasn't enough students to actually break it into classes. I think we actually didn't have any fifth graders at all. So it was like first, second, third, fourth, and then sixth, seventh, and eighth. And there's like one teacher for sixth, seventh, and eighth, and 1.5 teachers for first, second, third, and fourth. But all 18 students and both teachers stood in front of me and applauded, and my teachers cried, and I cried as I recited. I think it was from Isaiah, but I recited this Bible verse that I had found when I was in trouble, and it was the first experience of quote unquote divine intervention because I was like, think about it from like a first grader's point of view.
Yeah,
you're in trouble, and then you start reading the Bible, and the Bible says, if you're in trouble, call on God. So like to me, it's like God is literally speaking to me through this Bible verse. So that made it pretty easy. Like there was really no question, and I make fun of it like I was doing it for attention, which I was. I totally was doing it for attention, but I also genuinely felt like God was speaking to me through that Bible verse.
Yeah,
and that's why I didn't commit it to memory for the attention. The attention helped, but like I committed it to memory because I wanted to show God that I noticed, that I saw that He was speaking to me, and like I'm taking it seriously.
Yeah.
So that's how I became a Christian. And I took it that seriously for the next 18 years.
Whatever the equivalent of memorizing Bible verses was, as you got older, you were doing that thing.
Yeah, the equivalent of that is getting mad at my 14-year-old friends for looking at porn. That's the equivalent.
That's a good one.
Can I ask yours? Am I allowed to ask yours? Or
Yeah.
is this only a one way? Do you ask me questions? All right, I want to hear yours. Actually,
Okay.
I think I remember yours.
Okay. I've got one conversion story that I was too young to feel like it was real. So then I had another one because I felt guilty about how unreal that was for me.
Of course. I did that too, by the way.
Okay,
I don't think that's. I think that's very normal. Is to like be so afraid that the first one wasn't legit enough.
Right.
They're like, God, am I gonna go to hell because I was too young? Like,
Yeah.
maybe I didn't get it. Now I get it. I'm just gonna say it. I'm gonna say the words in case.
Literally give me the steps and I will complete the steps.
I will do it right.
Ask Jesus into my heart. Ask for forgiveness. Declare He's God.
Yeah, am I
I'm
missing
sure that's a
anything?
step.
Because I really don't want to be missing anything.
Right. So yeah, my early conversion story that didn't feel real enough for me, because that's how hard of a Christian I was I don't know how old I was, but it was around that time, maybe a little younger. I don't know, but I was with my dad and my older sister Ellie.
Okay, that's the one I remember.
Okay. And
That's you're saying your first one?
yeah. And I don't remember much of the build up. I just remember being in the living room and dad kind of asking me all the questions. And I knew I was afraid enough of hell to respond correctly to the questions and feel like it was good. And yeah, it was just like I was sitting on his lap. I think Ellie was on the other leg.
It's so funny. This is exactly how I remember it.
No way.
I
Okay.
don't know how. Like, it was so vivid for me, too. I think I was so proud because you were, what, like 5, Ellie was 7, I was 9.
It feels really young, though.
Again, still taking this so seriously. I think I was, like, tearing up. Like,
damn.
George shouldn't have to go to hell. Wow.
I was nervous.
But yeah, I remember this as vividly.
Damn.
As
Okay, because this
so
feels
funny.
like a dream I had.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel very vivid. I just have a picture of sitting on that one chair
the
in
red
the
chair.
living room.
The red chair in the living room that Dad
yep.
always sat and read the newspaper every morning on.
Yep. Just iconic,
iconic.
Midwestern conversion story.
Yeah.
So yeah, that I don't really remember it enough, but that was like the moment when people asked if I was a Christian or not. That was what I said.
Yeah.
So then that didn't feel real enough, and so I kind of felt guilty.
At what
enough.
point did you feel like that wasn't feeling real enough? Like at what point in your life? Like 2 years later, 5 years later, or like 6 months later?
I think that bought me about a year.
Okay.
I think because I want to say the guilt was always there, but
Uh-huh.
That it was probably it probably bought me a year or two. I don't know. But then it was just like the pressure at school to like be a Christian and
Yeah.
witness to people, and
At 6 years old. The intense pressure. I felt pressure to find people who weren't Christians. Like, I didn't know anyone who wasn't Christian. So anytime I thought somebody wasn't a Christian, it was like exciting for me. So it was like, oh yeah, oh, there's a target. And I'd be like 5 years old, 6 years old, like, oh, I've got to witness to this person who I heard said God's name in vain. So I'm assuming is not a Christian.
right. Well, that's a given.
Yeah, of course. So okay, so you're feeling this conviction, like not only do I need to be witnessing, but like, am I even a Christian?
Yeah. And the moment, and I don't remember the age, so I'm trying to use details to give me information about how old I was. I was in the basement, in the room next to Adam's room, and you were in the corner room in the basement.
Okay.
And I know I was for sure there in 8th grade, but I might have been there as early as like 6th or 7th grade.
Yeah, that would have been pretty late.
Yeah.
If it was in that room.
So, I don't know. It's all. I was just old enough to know that I should take this super seriously.
Yeah.
And I felt like I had kind of what you're talking about, that like divine intervention moment. And it was kind of just like a classic night where I was in my room, like alone. I was probably reading the Bible, but I was like, it just hit me how concerned I was that I didn't complete all the steps to be a Christian. And I was just like just terrified of hell and wanted to just like know what the steps were. Just give me the steps and I'll complete the steps.
I want to do it right.
Right. So I'm like, I'm kind of begging mentally. I'm not saying anything, but I'm just kind of like, God, give me something to work with here.
Yeah.
I'm working really hard at this.
Yeah.
And I remember it being mentally, everything was really loud. I was like freaking out. I was probably crying, don't know. And I remember the mechanical room had the washer and dryer in there, and it was really loud. And I remember when I was fretting about my eternal destination, it like those turned off and everything was really quiet in the basement. And like our house is just not very quiet in general. So I just felt this like wave of like peace and like, okay, we're going to be good. Like God hears what I'm trying to do and he gets it.
Yeah.
And he's here for me. I was like, dope. So I had that moment where just everything was super quiet and I felt really good and confident that like, all right, we're good. We did that.
Yeah.
We did it right. So I just kind of wanted to hear the setting, where you were, what it was
Set
like.
the stage.
Yeah. Because I think ours were pretty similar. So that's how it started. And if you picture, a graph, a line graph, that's say the beginning, and then everything's kind of up from then on. Everything just gets more religious, more intense. The relationship's more your own. Just start cooking.
Things definitely started cooking
So
in high school.
Okay. So the incline of that, I'm not that curious about. I don't know about you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It's all the same. I mean, it's all. I would just be talking about shame, guilt, Jesus. I have like spiritual memories and spiritual awakening memories, but it's all the same. It's all the same cycle of like God speaks to me in some arbitrary way that I view as God speaking to me, but in reality it's just like something that is a coincidence that touches me in some certain way.
Yeah.
And then I feel emotional about it and I talk to God and that makes me more emotional, which I'm interpreting as spirituality and spirit entering me, and then I pray and I feel bad about myself because I'm a bad person. And so there's not much to talk about. It's just that is the incline.
The incline.
Me doing that once a year, maybe twice a year, and on a good year, maybe even 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
Damn. That's a good Christian right there.
I tried. I tried my heart out to be a good Christian.
Okay, so that's the incline.
Uh-huh.
When does it not when does it peak, but when is it no longer getting higher, or when is it starting to go lower? What is a
Yeah.
moment where you're like, "Huh, I don't know how I feel about that."
Yeah. It plateaued in college for
Mm.
sure. Um, it was definitely freshman year. I was a part of a Christian like small group kind of thing. Um, that it was like it was basically just a youth group. It was college youth group is all it was, and I um was in it, but I didn't really have friends. All of my friends went to a different college than me. I kind of stayed
Mm.
home for my college. And so I was like, I gotta find friends, but I gotta find friends who are equally yoked.
Is that verbatim the word you used? I had never heard this in terms of.
You've never heard the term equally yoked? That's from the
No.
Bible. Oh, you were not a very good Christian.
Is this like when you like the cow is like yoked, or like the cattle? Something is it
I
yoked
actually have
in
no idea.
reference to cattle?
I think so.
I don't
I've only used equally yoked in terms of finding friends that are the same as me, or finding a wife that was the same as me. Like
know.
that is what I was taking it from, or
I
had
couldn't-
always taken it from. And that's what, yeah. Same.
Gotcha. I thought you were using it ironically, so that's why
I
I
was.
mentioned it. Oh, okay.
Well,
Okay.
because it's a stupid term.
Hmm.
Equally yoked is basically just like people who are Christians. If I don't, I like I used to know so much about the Bible, but now when I try to tap into actual Bible knowledge, it's like empty. My
There's
head
no
is
energy
empty.
to find it either.
I know.
Like it's probably there.
It's probably there. Yeah. So like equally yoked was like Paul or some shit was like, don't marry people who aren't Christians because they're gonna pull you away from Christianity. Be equally yoked. Oh,
Okay.
I think it is about oxes, because I think it's like oxes, if they're like pulling at different speeds, it like fucks up the
The yokage.
Yeah, the yolks.
Yeah.
There are too many yolks.
Right.
So yeah, in college, I'm like, I gotta find friends who are Christians, because I used to have friends in high school who were Christians who were like pushing me to be a better Christian, and now I don't have that, and I'm like, I don't know, probably like looking at porn more or something, and it's making me feel bad. So I'm like, I gotta find friends who like push me and encourage me. So then I'm going to this youth group.
But sounded like you're about to say strip club.
I'm going to the strip club, and I'm not finding equally yoked people anywhere. Everybody there is so unequally yoked. It's not even funny.
They're also surface level there. They don't
Yeah,
take
they
it
don't
seriously.
even talk. They don't even talk about God or the scriptures. So yeah, at this youth group, I wasn't meeting people. Like, I just didn't get it. We
Yeah.
didn't vibe. I also was really pretentious about my faith. That it was like, no one else is the same kind of Christian as me. Which I'm like obviously aware is it's like laughable at this point, because I wish I were more like them than I was. But at the time, it was eternally important for me to be the type of Christian that I was, and for me to find more Christians who were the type of Christian that I was. And I couldn't find them. I couldn't find them anywhere. And then as I kind of like stepped away, I was like, I gotta find a church who does this. I gotta find this. And like the more I start like looking, I don't know, I guess the more I just stopped, it stopped being around, or it stopped like being, I don't know, maybe I just fell away. Like maybe it was just like a slow falling away from, if I didn't have, which is, I guess, speaks to what Trinity, or what my Christian high school and Christian community was doing for me before then. But it was genuinely, if I didn't have a Christian community, I wasn't being constantly reminded and encouraged and told that I'm a bad person without God. And I kind of started to like forget that I was a bad person. And so yeah, I started meeting people and talking to people who weren't like Christians. And that included like queer people. And that was the big thing, was like a friend of my now wife, but then girlfriend and ours, she actually started asking these questions first. And this was all through freshman year. She was asking these questions. And we were scared for her. We were like, you can't ask these questions, man. There's a place called hell, and you could go there. But yeah, so she's asking these questions, and she's asking more like social questions, not necessarily about God, but more like, why can't gay people get married? That's kind of whack. Like, why are women worse than men? That feels bad.
Mm-hmm.
And I was kind of like, I liked this friend, so I wasn't going to be combative to her. I also knew her. She was one of my close Christian friends in high school, so I knew that she was sincere. You know, I knew that she was a sincere person, that she wasn't asking this out of a lot of the things Christians will do is when you start asking, they're like, you just want to sin more. You just want to be a sinner. And I think that's just like a bad faith way to talk with people who've fallen away from Christianity. So I was at least listening. I loved her and I knew her and I trusted her. So, you know, we would just talk and understand each other a little better. And then she invited her roommate who was gay and that roommate's girlfriend at the time. And they both came to our house and hung out with us. And this was kind of on like I was asking kind of the same questions as this friend, you know, like, why can't gay people get married? That is kind of weird. But I mean, I guess God says they can't. So I guess I have to agree with God.
Yeah.
That was kind of, you know, like you kind of hear it a lot, but like love the sinner, hate the sin was my mentality, was like, well, God does say it's a sin and that's pretty black and white. So I'm going to take God at his word, but still love everybody because it always started with love. So yeah, I'm asking these questions, but with the bent of like, it is still a sin though.
Right.
But I'm talking to this gay couple and I'm like, you know, what do you think about this whole you can't be gay thing that the church says?
Bold question. That's bold.
Yeah. And they were so nice. Like they had every right to be like, fuck you, dude.
Yeah.
You like shut the fuck up. But they happen to both grow up in the church, and they came out late in high school, and were pretty much thrown out of their church, all but thrown out of their church. I mean, when a church says, yeah, you can keep coming here, you just can't keep being gay.
Yeah.
The church is throwing you out. They're not accepting you in the church anymore. So that's what happened to these two is they were said like, you can't be the way you are. So, you know, figure that out.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what they were telling me. And they're like, yeah, I just think, you know, church sucks. And I don't, and I'm like, you know, always am pretentious and I know more than them and playing devil's advocate. And I'm like, but there are good churches though, right? There are good churches who don't hate people like you. And they're like, we grew up in good churches. we know what you're saying. And they all hate us. And so I don't know. It was kind of like, it was the first time, which is you grow up in Wichita, Kansas. It's sad that this is true, but it was literally my first time meeting gay people, people who I knew to be gay at the time. And I was blown away at how normal they were. They were just normal people who liked women. And I had to understand that a little bit. So I just kind of was like, I wrestled with that for a bit and started asking those same questions without the love the sin or hate the sin. It was more like, is it a sin? Because like I love my girlfriend and she loves her girlfriend. And the only difference is that we were born with a different sex. And that just feels incongruent and unfair to a God that's supposed to be fair and just. So I was kind of asking those questions. So that's when it plateaued. It was like peak, or like rising, and then hit that conversation. I remember that conversation specifically as like, oh, maybe I don't need to find people equally yoked as me. Like maybe I need to find people who are different than me to help understand and like grow my understanding of this worldview and if it's legitimate even. So yeah, that's when it plateaued.
Yeah. It's interesting hearing you talk about like love and how towards the end of your faith, it was like still predicated on love and like I'm still gonna love people, like I'm gonna love people like Jesus did, and that you kind of find through religion. And then as you're falling out of your faith, you're like, well, actually, I can still love people and leave all of the
Yeah.
the faith behind, which is weird when you find love through your faith, because it's a weird version of
love. Because like in Christianity, they win as long as you think love doesn't exist outside of God. Like they something they would say is love is like God is love. That's that's a very big Bible verse thing is
Right.
God is love. So then when people say, if you're not a Christian and you say you love your wife or you love your whatever, like that's not real love. Like they co-opted love from me. So then it was like, how do I even love without God? Because they stole it. They told me love is this. They define love as God. So then I couldn't love anybody outside of God being there.
Right.
So then when I see, I see this gay couple who love each other and they don't have God, or when I see like this podcast where they love people so well and they don't have God, or at least they don't have the same God that I had.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, that feels good to me. That feels like a real love, like a real tangible love. Also, not to mention, there were a lot of people who had God and had no love that I grew up with. So it's like there was just an incongruence with like, okay, so these people who have God, the love that they have feels bad. But these people who don't have God, the love they have feels warm. And like, I think a lot of it was like, why would God create me in a way to perceive this kind of love as warm and this kind of love as cold if that wasn't true love? Like, it just didn't make sense that God created such a incongruence with me. Like, why wouldn't I have perceived the quote unquote God's love as warm and the quote unquote heathen love as cold? But like, my perceptors that God gave me were saying this love is better than this love, or at least more comfortable than this love. So that helped. It was like, I think God exists, but I don't think it's the same God that I grew up with. I think it's a different God. I think it's the God of the Bible, but I think it's bigger than that. I think this God is every God. So then I started dabbling in like, everything is God. And that was fun. That was a lot of fun. I got into Buddhism for a bit. People say got into Buddhism. It's so stupid.
Buddhism phase.
And I'm just like the whitest guy you'll ever meet. And I really didn't get into Buddhism. I like read a book and a half and like Googled a few things. But like I loved that I wasn't confined to one faith anymore.
Yeah.
So that's why I only bring up Buddhism wasn't the thing. It was just different.
That's hella liberating when you're coming out of Christianity to say, I'm not only an atheist, I'm gonna check out this Buddhist thing.
Buddhist.
Yeah.
So that's what that was. And that's why I say it. I think I say it because it pisses off Christians.
Right.
Because it's like, you can't be Buddhist. It's like, I can't. So what? What are you going to do? What are you going to do to stop me?
Yeah.
I'm going to read this Buddhist book.
I had the same feeling. I don't think I got into it that far, but not just being a worldly human, like going from Christian to worldliness.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what they tell you is going to happen.
I was so destined to prove them wrong.
Right.
I don't want to do this to sin more. I want to do this to be more holy than you.
Because this religion's just better.
Yeah, they got it figured out. And then I realized nobody has it figured out. And I didn't realize this. I came to that conclusion on my own. Like, I don't know if I think that's even true. Buddhists might be right. Christians might be right. I might be wrong. But there was liberating coming to the conclusion that like, I don't have to have it figured out. Like a lot of people don't have it figured out. And I kind of like not having it figured out. It's kind of fun. It's scary as hell. It's terrifying, but it was a lot more fun than having hell held over me. And I still had friends who would try to hold hell over me. They would say like, but what about hell? Like, what about, and, I'll never forget saying this to my friend. It was like the first time I'd said it out loud and the first time I meant it. And I had said, he was like, what about hell? Like, that's still scary. Like above all, like
that's a really good counterpoint to whatever you said before that.
Even if
that's
you're right,
really good point.
Literally everything you said is right. If you're wrong, God's sending you to hell. And it's like, it's meant to sober you. It's meant to be like, oh, I'm actually not in control, and I need to just look to the one who has all the power, because he can send me to hell. And he said that, and it just like came to me. I think God gave it to me.
Yeah.
And it came to me, and I said, I would rather go to hell. And I mean this. I would rather go to hell for eternity than to go to the heaven of a God that sends people to hell for not knowing which spirituality is correct. Like I will, in solidarity with everybody who goes to hell, I would choose to go to that hell rather than going to the heaven of a God who, that's how he makes decisions. If you love me, you're in. If you don't love me, you're out. Well, then fuck you, God. I'm out. Even if I loved you, even if I loved God and I wanted to go to heaven, I'm choosing hell because I fundamentally disagree with that way of choosing things. And like, sure, I'm a human and he's a God, so I'm probably wrong, and if he's probably right, like, so what? Send me to hell. That's fine. Like, I know I don't win. I lose in this scenario.
Yeah.
But like, I would rather spend eternity in hell than know that I gave my life to a God that I felt like was being unfair. And I think I stand by that.
I kept trying to jump in to say bars at some point, but I couldn't. They were all just bars.
Too many bars.
Too many bars.
That once I said that out loud, boy howdy. Talk about, we went from plateau
Right.
to straight down. That roller coaster was going straight down.
Yeah, you're untethered at that point to anything.
Totally. Nobody could say anything to me. Nobody could say shit to me. This is like, so what? Your last line of defense doesn't even work on me anymore.
That's the heaviest card they can play.
Yep.
And you said, I don't care.
Yeah, I said, that don't matter.
Yeah.
That don't matter.
That I was actually going to ask you that. Like, is there a moment you first started saying, I'm actually not a Christian, or telling people that? Like, was that ever? Because there's that phase where people are like, what church are you going to? And you're kind of like, I'm looking around.
I'm looking.
and you don't want to say it, but you're there. What was that ever a distinct thing, or that sounds like a pretty big moment?
Yeah, that was the moment, I think, for me. That was the moment I stopped looking for churches.
There you go.
'Cause I think at that point I was still looking for churches that would like feel the same, like feel good, like, you know, we're a church, but we love gay people and we accept gay people who they are, and we're a church, but we also believe that the earth is billions of years old, and that's okay to think. And we're a church, and we think God loves everybody, and everybody gets to heaven. But then once I said that, I was like, I don't need saving anymore. I don't need, I like the community aspect, and I say all of this. I love the idea of church. I love the idea of a community who all stick up for each other. I think that is how we are supposed to be living, is as a community like that. I don't think churches actually do work like that, like they say they do. I think I've seen other communities who work much better than that. But I say all that. I don't think church is bad. I just didn't want to go. And I think obviously you've heard me tell this story, like this story of my life at this point. But like I just have so much baggage with church that I just don't think church is ever going to be right for me. But I'm fully aware that that's like an anxiety of mine and not like a truth. But I don't have to work through that yet. We'll get there at some point. But I don't need church anymore, I think, is what I realized then. So yeah. Oh, you had asked. That was a big moment. Telling him that. I remember telling Mom that that was scary.
And that, like, verbatim, I'm not a Christian.
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever really told Mom that.
Yeah.
I think I just made it kind of clear.
Right.
Like, we're not looking for church anymore. I think that might have been like how I said it.
Which is
you never really say anything straightforward to Mom because it's too scary. The biggest
She's actually worse than hell. So you're actually more afraid.
Actually, yeah, I am still afraid of. I'm more afraid of my mom than hell at this point. So telling her I wasn't afraid of hell was not an option.
Yeah,
because that would have actually put me in hell. No, I remember telling Maddie, my girlfriend at the time, who was still a Christian and was at least still on her own journey. I remember telling her I was an atheist. I used the word atheist. I think I used the word atheist as like a like going out on a limb. Like the safest place in the world was with her because
Mm.
like what is she gonna like? She's the one who knows me best. So then I was like maybe I'm an atheist, and
Mm.
like I like leaned into it like I'm an A word, and she responded like any good Christian does is you can't say a word. Like you cannot be the A word. That's bad.
uh,
You can be spiritual but not Christian. You can be whatever, but like atheists are scary.
and that's like early college.
That was like sophomore junior year of
Mm.
college. She got it and she loved me and we were able to talk through it. And now she's more of an A word than I am.
Oh
But
God.
but at that time it was like that's the big word in
Yeah.
spirit in Christianity
Totally.
is atheist. So
And
that's why I said it too. I didn't actually
Right.
think I was an atheist. I
Well-
just wanted to say that I was.
when you're saying that, like you wanted to call it something,
Yeah.
like I just all of the minor interactions I had with people where I was questioning things and they'd be like, "You'll figure it out. Don't worry."
Yeah.
Or I'm praying for you.
Yeah. You'll come around.
You'll come around.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you want to call it something
Yeah.
because you're like, my feelings and thoughts are valid, but I don't have a word for
And
it.
you will not accept it unless there's a label on it.
Literally.
Yeah.
Literally. So I remember that stress too.
Yeah.
of
That's
calling it
that's
something.
what it was too. I wanted to put a label. I was desperate to put a label on it because people would not accept. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what I am. And then if you say I don't know what I am, yeah, they jump on you. They're like fucking vultures. They're like, oh, well, you should read this Bible verse. You should come to my
Yeah.
church and da da da. Because if you don't know, that means there's like you're searching, you're wondering, you don't.
Right.
But like I was so secure in my I don't know. It was like
Mm.
I don't know, and I fucking love it.
Mm. Yeah,
but
it's
yeah.
not an invitation.
Yeah, exactly. But they didn't see it, so it was a lot easier to say atheist. Which I don't know. I don't think I am an atheist. I just don't think I care to be an atheist.
Right.
I think it's more fun. It's more fun to have a little mysticism. It's more fun to think about meaning. I think about meaning too much to feel comfortable without meaning. I do think that we're all a bunch of cells that are bound together and somehow have consciousness, and I think that freaks me out. And I think that we're not much more than that, but I think we're a little bit more than that.
Mhm.
I think we're enough more than just cells. Not just humans. I think animals and trees.
Yeah.
I think everything is enough more than just cells that I don't want to call myself an atheist because I think that enough more gives me hope for meaning, and I'm gonna hold on to it. And I really think that that's probably connected to being a Christian, but I think that's okay. I'm okay with it, and I like it. It makes me feel happy. So
Yeah.
this new version of me is allowed to feel happy. So I let myself feel happy sometimes.
Damn. God would have none of that. I
Yeah,
hope
God,
you know
no,
that.
absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely fucking not.
No.
That's what God would say too. I think that was in John. Absolutely fucking not.
right below Jesus wept.
Yeah. When I stopped caring to be a Christian, I cared so much to figure it out. I was like, 3 years, I was like, I'm going to uncover this. I'm going to figure out what is true.
Yeah.
I was really interested in what the universe was and who I was in the universe and how it was connected. And if it was God, if God was a woman, if God was had a gender, I was like really, really intrigued with spirituality and the bigger picture. That like I just tend to do everything wholehearted. I think because where in high school I'd have had conversation with everybody I met about Jesus. After I stopped being a Christian, I had a conversation with everybody I could about my spirituality. Like it just like everything was the universe and the bigness of it and how it made me feel and how emotional I got. Like it felt genuinely so freeing that like I had to share with people. I was like more of an evangelical for this new spirituality than I was for Jesus. But
they lost the good one. Then.
yeah, they did. They fucking did. They better believe it. But yeah, so recently and in like the last couple years, I think I've just kind of I exhausted myself of that. I think I worked really hard at it and of course didn't find an answer because there isn't an answer. And think I just got to a point where I was like, that was fun. Now if people say like, what do you think I'm just like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I feel pretty good about that.
Yeah.
I don't really ever feel the need to explain that more. I could talk for, what are we at, 50 minutes and 25 seconds about it, because I still love it. It's still
Yeah.
so connected to me. But
Mm.
yeah, I'm not as gung ho about chatting people up
Yeah.
about spirituality. It just, I don't read as much about it. I like talking to people who have deconstructed,
Mm-hmm.
because it feels so validating, and I feel so seen when I hear other people's stories.
Right.
Because it's like, yeah, that was real, right? Like that happened. We did do that. I did take my shoes off at church because I thought I was on holy ground. That's true, right? And it did, and people will confirm those things for me. So then it's like, oh, nice. Okay, now we can chat for a little bit. But
Right.
now, like, my wife and I have deconstructed like 5-6 years ago, maybe even more than that. And then it's like, what else is there to talk about anymore? Like, yeah, now we talk more about like politics and what, without a God to guide us, what are we supposed to do about immigration? How are we supposed to treat people who don't feel the same as us when God doesn't tell us how to do it? And that's interesting. That's more of like a morality, ethical thing that
Yeah.
we don't know what to do, because we don't have God anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really fun. It's really fun to figure that out. Like, we don't have kids. We may not have kids, but it's fun to think about, like, how would we parent kids? What if our kid hurts somebody? What is our responsibility to our kid? What is our responsibility to loving them? What is our responsibility if they hurt my feelings?
Right.
I mean, that's going to be hard, and I'm going to be mad. But, like, God has pretty straight answers in the Bible about how to parent kids. I don't have a God anymore who has straight answers about how to parent a kid when
Right.
they hurt my feelings.
Right.
So now it's like, I guess I'll go to therapy and I'll listen to my therapist.
Right.
I'll do what my therapist says, or I don't know. But it's fun.
Mm-hmm.
It's fun because I'm in control. I'm in absolute control of my destiny, of my life, of who I love, of how I love. And it's so freeing. But
Which is just such a sharp contrast
Yeah.
to Christianity.
Yeah, 'cause-
you being in control is the worst thing for
yeah,
you.
that's literally the worst. And that was what started me on the path, was I started being in control of my thinking.
Mm.
But yeah, so I think if I were to answer right now, I think I'm I don't know,
Yeah.
kind of answer.
Yeah.
Which I feel really good about. I think mostly just because I've kind of exhausted myself looking, and now it's more fun to just listen to other people look.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. And like, speaking of like politics and therapy and everything like that, like, once you don't have religion, for me personally, it was so much easier for me to focus on everything that is here and present and happening every day.
Yeah.
And I realized how much value there was in those things. Like, in Christianity, there's so much, like, be content no matter what, no matter any of your surroundings. You know, you always have God, so you don't need to worry about anything happening ever because you have God.
Don't have no fear.
Right.
Have no fear.
There's like, the like missionaries who would be imprisoned but still worship God, and because they were just so infatuated. Like, that's what you're supposed to do when shitty things happen, is praise God. And like, now all you have is the things around you, and it's like, oh, it just helped me like frame my meaning and purpose, and like really enjoy those moments of life that are real
and that are
happening.
here.
Yeah. Like, this conversation is happening and real, and I'm not thinking about God or how to invest in our relationship religiously, or I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just so much more present. And a lot of the answers that I can find about like myself or how I feel, I found through like therapy or just being a human and exploring that. So yeah, it just, my interest in what is actually here has just skyrocketed.
Yeah.
Whereas when I was a Christian, it was all on this distant thing that was so far away.
Do you find, what are some things, I just think of this because you talk about like here, and I still struggle to hold on to what's here because of that. But do you find there's some things held over from Christianity that you didn't realize were like embedded in you, that, you know, maybe just like stuck around long enough for whatever, like, I can't think of an example, but yeah, is there anything that you're like, oh, that part of me, the part of me that like gets really riled up about this, I think that's the Christian part of me that I haven't yet like cut off. Is there anything that hits you like that? Like one for me would be the here and now. Would be like I have a hard time being present because God asked us not to be present, asked us to always be thinking like future focused, heaven focused. Like there's so much more out going on than right here in your body, and like you're not allowed to feel in your body. Mostly because your body is sinful, like that. We are.
You aren't even your body.
Yeah, you aren't your body. Your body is a vehicle that is taking your soul from birth to heaven. Like that's where
anything you can worship with your body, and that's it.
Yeah, that's yeah, exactly. But you cannot enjoy your body. You cannot love your body. You cannot notice your body or notice anyone else's body, and. So that's something like the here and now in my body, I still find myself like disconnected from because I spent so much time tearing away my body from my soul. And now that I've like found my soul, it's like hard for me to now find my body again. Is there anything like that? Like I just went on a whole rant about body, but it doesn't even have to be body. But is there anything that you feel like Christianity has ripped from you that you're still trying to find back?
Yeah, like something really distinctly came to mind when you said that. And it's, I guess, just the idea of like moral absolutism that comes with religious thinking, that there is an answer. There's a right way to do things. And just morally, I always felt that way. Like there is a right way to do stuff. Not knowing means you need to look harder. And that is just like really influenced the way that I've lived my life. But therapy's been really good with that because there's a lot of like difficult situations I want advice on. Yeah. And there are just things that you do and you just like once he literally said, part of being an adult. Your
therapist said this?
Yeah, he's like, part of being an adult is doing things and living with the consequences. Like,
oh no.
You make actions and those things happen, and that's the thing. How you react and the things happening after are also part of living. That it's not like you didn't fail and now you're trying to pick up the pieces. That is still as much of living as was making the decision itself, which is like so scary for me coming from religion. So yeah, it's surfaced. I don't know, just like in relationships. It's definitely surfaced like with this, like a podcast, like creative outlets have always been really difficult for me because it's such a gray area of space to exist in, to just like express yourself. And there's not really a right way to do it. There are people who are better and worse at it. But like when it comes to like art, music, all of these like creative things, I don't know how to be correct at it. Yeah. And it's really hard.
That could be, and we had talked about this, that could be a whole other podcast episode where we just talk about like, how do you express yourself?
Right. Yeah. It's so difficult because like I can hear all of the tiny voices of like, the sound is off. You're pausing too long. That comment you made wasn't funny. All of these things going on that are like they're trying to make it better, but are actually worsening the product.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's definitely been a thing that I've had to peel back from religion. Is just there's not absolute correct things all the time, and in creative outlets, it definitely surfaces.
If you hear that noise in the background, that's my dog just freaking out and running in circles. Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I kind of talked about a little bit just like how we like make decisions. There's not necessarily a correct answer. Honestly, there's not ever a correct answer. There's like maybe one that has less harm and provides less harm to people. But like, you just have to trust your gut, trust yourself. And that's like, that is the most anti-Christ heretical thing you could think of. It's right. Like, trust yourself to make a decision. Why would I do that when I could, which I've recently realized I spent so much time as like a kid praying and looking for a leading from God. Mm-hmm. And then I would get a leading that I would think was from God. So, I'd be praying and my heart would say, do this. That feels right. And of course, when I'm like, wow, I feel so much peace about this idea that I just had.
Yeah.
It must be from God. This peace is from God.
Mm.
And like, but now that I've stripped away God, that peace still existed. I was only ever listening to myself and trusting myself. But because I put God's name on it, I could really trust it. And now that I don't have God's name to put on it, it's so much harder to trust any peace that I have. So I'm like, is that true peace, or is that like, am I being selfish, or am I being thoughtless? Am I, is there a better answer down the road that I just don't know of yet? But like, if I prayed about it and if that I felt that peace and I could say that it was from God, then like, there's no stopping me from making that decision.
Yeah.
And so it's like, there's just no absolute anymore. It's all me trusting my gut, which I've only ever actually trusted my gut. I just was able to call it God to make it a little easier to say yes to.
It like this analogy always comes to my head. I don't know if I heard it somewhere or just thought about it, but I just think of like space and like space exploration and how like if you're like an astronaut on a space station and you're like tethered to it, it's like cool, you're like exploring, but you're still connected to God. Like you're connected to the thing.
Yeah.
And you get to explore, but it's still with the source of like, this is home, this is who I am. But once you like cut that tether, and it really feels like you're floating in space because you have no background or foundation of morality,
of truth.
Yeah. So you have no idea. It's super scary because you're just in the middle of nowhere. And that's how it always felt for me at the beginning.
It still feels that way for me sometimes now.
Yeah.
Even just like talking about like, even just that question, what do I do when my kid hurts my feelings?
Yeah.
I'm floating in space. I'm floating in space with no correct answer. Like, I want to tell them that it hurt my feelings, but I don't want them to feel like they're responsible for my feelings. I'm responsible for my feelings. But so I'm like, what do I do? Does my therapist know? Can I tether myself to my therapist so that they have the capital T truth that I'm looking for?
Right.
Or like, does my wife have it? Or does my kid have it? Does the universe have it? Like, where do I find capital T truth? Because I'm confused right now.
Right.
And I, 3 times a day probably I run into that where I'm like, God, what do I do? I don't know. And it's typically a moment where I would pray. That's how I know.
Yeah.
Sometimes even my instinct, like I'll like, I watched a football game last week and somebody got really seriously injured. And my instinct was to pray. And like, I don't think that's bad. I actually think that's kind of beautiful. Like I genuinely felt, I felt scared and I wanted to be tethered to something. I wanted something bigger than me to say, it's going to be okay. Like I have this under control. But like, then when I felt silly for wanting to pray and realizing like, oh, there's nothing to pray to, I felt so helpless. I just sat and watched this person be seriously injured and think they could die. And I have nothing to give to this. I have no truth, nothing to, I'm just here floating, watching this happen. And that happens like 3 times a day. We're all running into something where I'm like, oh, what should I do? All right, let me pray.
Yeah.
And then like, oh wait, I'm not praying. What do I do?
That's crazy that the circuitry of your brain is
I still haven't uncrossed the wires.
I remember this podcast I was listening to. I think they were talking. I think it was about just like money and happiness and the relationship between the two, and it was really, really interesting. But there was this part where they were talking about, for like kids, and they were doing this like experiment. For kids, when they have a sort of like lucky charm or like, special, they have like a pair of shoes they really like, and they'll wear that on test day at school.
Like a superstition kind of thing.
Superstitious kind of like lucky charm thing they hold on to of like, I do this every day, or I do this, and this makes me happy. This makes things good happen for me. The science they were saying was like, there's not really any cons to that, like emotionally and how the kid feels. It's only that it's wrong. It's only
that it's not true.
Like the kid feels good. They don't perform any differently based on that. They don't study less because they know they have their lucky
Yeah.
shoes that they're going to wear. They still work really hard. They just have this like contentment because they're like, I've got my lucky shoes. Like I'll be fine today.
It's like a backboard that isn't actually there, but you can pretend is there.
Right.
Yeah.
And so they were saying this in terms of like, I think money and like having a savings account and a retirement and all this of like, because they were talking about money and happiness and like, why do we make so much money just to have it lay in a savings account and then retire and all this stuff. And it was really interesting. So they brought up that example and my mind immediately went to religion. I was like,
Yeah,
that is what
sounds like.
God feels like for all of my childhood was like, I'm afraid. I don't know what's happening. I'll pray and God's got me.
Yeah.
And
it worked.
it worked.
It worked. I didn't feel as anxious about things because I had God.
Yeah.
Which now that I don't have God, it's so funny because I realize now I was just tethering myself to myself. And like now I feel anxious and I don't know what to do, but I've only ever actually tethered myself to myself. But I just trusted that to be true and to give me the peace that I needed.
Interesting.
And I just called it God. But like if I could have that same faith in myself that I had and what I called God, but was actually only myself growing up, like I could still give myself the same peace of mind. I could still think, okay, I'm scared now. What do I do? Okay. I feel better now. Like I could do that. I could do that. And I know I could do that because I did that for so long. And God wasn't actually ever there. It was only ever me looking for something to tether myself to.
Yeah. That's super interesting. Visualizing what we were tethering ourselves to was actually ourselves.
Yeah. What were you actually tethering yourself to growing up?
Yeah.
Like, if God doesn't exist, and even back then God didn't actually exist, what do you think you were actually tethering yourself to?
Yeah. Because I don't know. I've always thought that was God and religion, and I didn't want to be connected to it. So I've like severed that connection.
Yeah.
And I'm never going back to being connected. Like the connection was the problem. But now I'm like, the connection felt pretty good.
Yeah.
What if it was just myself that entire time? I could connect to that. So that's interesting. I never thought about it that way.
I just thought about it 2 minutes ago.
Well, clearly it's had a big impact on your life.
Yeah, I've been thinking about that for years.
Well, yeah. So how are you feeling? Was that good for you? Did you enjoy your time?
I enjoyed my time.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the best podcast ever. Thank you for having me on.
Yeah. Well, you're very welcome, sir.
We've been talking for like an hour, like just so casually, and now it's like,
outro,
sir.
Well,
How do you typically? How have you ended these in the past?
I guess would just be something like, thanks for coming on. I enjoyed my time. I hope you did too.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I feel like I learned a lot today. We're gonna call it there. I hope you had a good day. And I'll see you again next week, audience, not my guest.
I had a good time.
Cool.
Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, well, thanks. This was a great topic. So thanks. And we're going to stop for an ad break. And
Squarespace.
So thank you all for listening. Goodbye.